Today, we are joined by Tracy Chamoun, who over the years has built her own path through diplomacy, political commentary, and public engagement, including serving as Lebanon's ambassador to Jordan. Coming from one of Lebanon's most prominent political families, Tracy is the daughter of the late Dany Chamoun and the granddaughter of former President Camille Chamoun. She has remained active in the public and political affairs, often expressing outspoken views on the Lebanese state, governance, diplomacy, and the future of the country. In this interview, we explore her perspective on Lebanon's current political situation, her vision for the country's future, the lessons she learned through diplomacy, and the more personal side of her life that many people rarely see. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
To start with, at the core, what do you think is Lebanon's crisis today? Is it the political crisis we are in? Is it the corruption? Is it the system? Is it the judicial? What do you think is Lebanon's main crisis today?
I think it's a geographic crisis. Most wars are results of geographic conditions. We happen to be positioned in a very strategic location where we're surrounded by countries that have been through, Syria's been through years of war, and Israel has been engaged in very aggressive warfare since the 7th of October incidents. And they have now become very powerful and know that they're very powerful, and so they're using this to spread their aggression and actualize their agendas in the region. And we happen to be geographically situated within the proximity of those ambitions. We're also in a larger regional framework, which is the Middle East and what's going on now between the United States, Israel, and Iran. And we are directly implicated in that battle for many reasons, one of them because of Hezbollah and the other one because of our proximity to Israel. So I think our problems are really very geographic right now. We have other problems, which we can talk about when the situation is not so acute and dramatic and dangerous for Lebanon, which are, economic problems, but it's all a result as well of the wars that we've undergone repeatedly over the decades.
Yeah. So if you were the President of the Republic, how would you handle the situation today politically?
I've thought about that, and I don't think that I would have let it go so far. There are many things that could have been done to prevent Lebanon from being in this predicament. If we look back at the war in 2024, the president had not yet been elected when Hezbollah was pretty much decimated by the Israelis, and they killed Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. I think when I became president, I would have tried to, in a way, allow Hezbollah to feel more protected by Lebanon and to bring them back into the fold rather than to surrender them to Iran. And there was a time, I think, when President Aoun was talking about a national defense strategy. And at that time, there was also willingness on the part of Hezbollah in that weakened state to talk about a national defense strategy. Mohammed Raad mentioned it several times. And that's what we should have done right then, is come up with a national defense strategy.
Why didn't it work?
It didn't work because I think that they felt that they had more time to do that, but they weren't working on their own timetable. They were working on the timetable of Israel and the United States, which was trying to force the issue. Mm-hmm. And rather than be deliberate about talking about a national defense strategy where you have control over the declaration of war and peace, which is the key issue, because you don't want any element within Lebanon starting a war that Lebanon cannot handle. You want it to be entirely controlled by the state apparatus. They didn't do that. And they didn't do it in the time frame that was given to them, which I believe was also very rigid and imposed upon Lebanon, and didn't take into account the difficulty of the intercommunal balance and equilibriums, and also there was a complacency that should not have been there. There should have been an urgency to do that national defense strategy right away. So I think that that's where there was a lack. I also think that the period between 2024 and 2026, when Lebanon did not go and say to Hezbollah, okay, let's come up with this strategy where we take back the declaration of war and peace. During that time, I think Iran moved in. And they then took hold of the military wing of Hezbollah and rehabilitated it. And the state was also lacking in this sense because people were aware of how many Iranian members of the Revolutionary Guard came to Lebanon at that time. I mean, as a diplomat, I know, for instance, that every embassy is allowed 4 or 5 diplomatic visas. Well, there are about 250 people here on diplomatic visas.
For the Iranian embassy?
For the Iranian embassy.
Okay. How about for other embassies, for example?
No, of course not. No, I'm telling you, it's only 4 or 5 per embassy.
Okay.
So if I had seen that, I would say, wow, there's something strange going on here. Instead of, throwing the ambassador out, I would have summoned the ambassador and said, what are all these visas for? And in fact, it took the Israelis to bring that to people's attention, but the government knew all the time that these people had entered on visas and were staying here and were rehabilitating Hezbollah, which meant what? Which meant that the Iranian influence was gaining strength in Lebanon in preparation for the war. And when the war happened,
Your Excellency, it's the Lebanese government that is issuing the visas for these
yes,
people.
I agree. I agree. So if you ask me what I would have done differently,
yes,
I would not have allowed those visas to be issued, certainly.
Yeah. And if we're talking about the visas for the Iranian embassy, we can also talk about the embassy of the United States of America, which is the biggest in the region. I mean, a country like Lebanon, do you think there is a need for such a huge embassy in the country?
I don't, and I've always been, curious about why it's so big. And I think that it's becoming obvious that Lebanon is going to play a very geographical, again, strategic role. And what scares me is the expansionist ambitions of Israel to create a greater Israel. So it does certainly make me curious as to why they put such a big embassy here.
So now that we have negotiations, or so-called negotiations, or indirect talks with Israel, that is expected to expand in the coming period, what leverage do you think that Lebanon has, realistically speaking?
Realistically speaking, at this point, it's very late in the game. Israel has already invaded the south, and we see today that the evacuation orders are spreading way north of the Litani. So their initial objective of this relative security zone is not applicable anymore. I think that the fact that President Trump has taken a personal interest in Lebanon is probably the only leverage we have. He has 2 Lebanese advisors, 3 with Tom Barak in his close quarters, and his grandson is part Lebanese. So I think that the leverage we have is that President Trump is taking an interest in Lebanon, and that he is the only person who can, to a certain extent, limit Netanyahu in his ambitions. And I think this became very obvious. I'm not saying because I'm pro or against anybody, I'm saying it in a very factual way, that when the Israelis launched their attack on the 8th of April and they bombed Beirut and they killed 350 people, their intentions were much greater than that. They had planned a 3-day attack on Beirut. And had it not been for President Trump's intervention at that time, they would have continued. So I think history has put us in a position where we do have that leverage. How much it can limit Israel's ambitions, I don't know. Because we saw what happened with the Golan. You know, the Golan was given to Israel. And I don't know whether the south of Lebanon will also be given to Israel. It's a very, very difficult situation. But I do believe that negotiations are important. I don't agree with the way it has been handled diplomatically. I think it's been too overt, too public, catching moments, photographs and sound bites and things like that. I think that the work should have been done on a much more serious and secret level to begin with, to establish what are the parameters of the negotiation between both parties. I certainly think that the joint statement that was produced was a big mistake because Israel took over the narrative and decided to declare that they and Lebanon have everything in common. We have a common enemy. We have common ambitions. We didn't realize we were such good friends. And this has backfired. This has backfired on the president also in what he's trying to do because he's had a lot of difficulty recovering from that overexposure. I think going forward, and I tend to agree in this position with Speaker Berri, and indirect negotiations are much better at this stage because we're dealing with, we're dealing directly with the problem. And the problem is not that the Lebanese government is in control of the fighting between Israel and Lebanon. The problem is that the weapons are in somebody else's hands. And so therefore we have to acknowledge that in negotiations.
Yes. Your Excellency, you mentioned in one of your interviews that there is now the channel of communication is very important. And since now the channel of communication is open between Israel and Lebanon, this has broken the taboo that we've always been facing. And it's very important that this has been broken. Do you think that this would have any successful outcome for Lebanon in the future?
Well, why I said is that negotiations are very important because right now there's a blatant violation of Lebanon's sovereignty with Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon and possible future annexation. So if you don't enter into negotiations, you cannot draw on the legal framework of the formality of international boundaries, which must be respected. So only by going to the table can we say, we need to have our boundaries, our borders respected, and you need to withdraw.
And this you're talking about direct negotiations?
I'm talking, right now they're going to be direct.
There has to be direct.
There has to be direct.
Well,
in Nakura, during the maritime border negotiations, they were indirect, but the message still got across.
Yes.
So direct, indirect, I think we've crossed that bridge now. But at least it establishes a legitimacy to reclaiming our border. And the first thing which has to be demanded, which really came as an afterthought in everything that we've been seeing is the categorical withdrawal of every Israeli soldier from Lebanese soil, including the 5 points which they had initially claimed. Now we have they're putting up the argument that the Lebanon has to then replace their forces and guarantee security for the north, but this is them again hiding behind their right to defend themselves clause that they put into everything to justify whatever they're doing.
Yes. But then why do we have UNIFIL on the borders if we have to have...
I think UNIFIL is just a witness at this point. UNIFIL really is just a witness. They're not intervening in any way except by reporting what is going on. But I think that...
but UNIFIL did report some violations for the Israelis.
Yes, they did. But, Israel acts with impunity. Israel doesn't care what is reported at the United Nations. As a matter of fact, the United Nations has become more or less of a paralyzed organization these days.
Israel has also attacked the UNIFIL.
And attacked UNIFIL, yes, absolutely. So again, there's this question of impunity and double standards. What is okay for Israel is not okay for anybody else. And this is what we're having to deal with. But I think that this is changing. I think it's changing in the world. I think that the people's eyes are opening about the level of media manipulation, of political control that Israel has been exercising in the world through AIPAC and other organizations.
Now that you have mentioned double standards, what do you think of the double standards that we have in Lebanon diplomatically and the way they are dealing, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is dealing with different embassies in Lebanon?
I think it's absolutely incorrect. And, diplomacy is like it's like a white line that's drawn where you keep dialogue going, no matter how bad the situation is between countries, because you always have to reserve an exit for any situation. If it becomes very dramatic, very bad, you have to have recourse. And diplomacy really is the art of the refinement of communication, not the segregation of communication into good people and bad people.
Yeah. So Israel has expanded the so-called yellow line from 55 villages, and I heard your post yesterday, or was it the day before, from 55 villages to more than 69 villages in the south of Lebanon. And the drones are over our heads every single day, plus the strike on Dahi on Wednesday. So do you think this is a pressure tactic from Israel because now the negotiations are taking place or they are expected to take place? Or do you think this is a long-term strategy that they are abiding by?
I think they're implementing their plan. Okay, if you look at how this thing started, going back to the question, what would you have done if you had been president? We knew there was going to be a land invasion because for a month before, Israel had positioned several hundred tanks and armored vehicles along the Lebanese border with bulldozers. So anybody can see what is going to happen. At that point, for the army to pull away would have been the absolute opposite reaction that I would have had. I would have sent every tank, every armored vehicle, and I know that the Lebanese army has about 1,000, and put them on the border looking straight at the Israeli tanks. And I would have escalated it and made it a Lebanese issue. It's like, no, you do not invade. Let us do our job with Hezbollah. You do not invade. So I think that was also a missed opportunity. And I think that the withdrawal of the army has created a huge vacuum in the security of the people, in their morale, in the morale of the country, And so we don't have a very advanced army. But we do have tanks. They may be old, but they can sit there and look straight at the Israelis. So I think that there was a lack there as well. But going back to that, this is a premeditated, planned action, this invasion of Lebanon. This has not happened overnight. Nothing with Israel is spontaneous. It's all progressive. If you look at when the war ended in Lebanon in 2024, immediately Syria, Assad left, Shara came, they went in, they took the land that they wanted. So everything is premeditated, and we do not need to underestimate or also to think, oh, no, they don't mean that. No, and we cannot listen to them. I did say they were liars. They are lying about their intentions. And I think that we need to be very, very vigilant about that and not fall into that trap, because what they say and what they do doesn't correspond.
See, Your Excellency, there's some Lebanese who say that what we are in today is the cause of the 6 missiles that Hezbollah hit Israel. In your opinion, is this true or false?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes, because they did, out of allegiance with Iran, a trigger. They pulled the trigger, but Israel was waiting. They were baiting them, they were waiting, they were hoping. And that gave Israel the excuse to come in so massively because they were ready.
There's always arguments that people say, why should we take the initiative first? Why not wait for them to come in?
Because they would have created a false flag operation and come in. they are very clever at doing that. They would not park, hundreds of vehicles in readiness to come in. That costs a lot of money to keep an army in place like that for months and months and months. Plus, they have other fronts. They have Yemen, they have Iran, they have the West Bank. So they needed to activate that front so that they could implement their plan. And when they say, okay, we're going to do a buffer zone of 10 kilometers, which today is expanding, and however much it expands, it takes one missile to disrupt the population in the north. So however much they expand, missiles have long ranges. Some missiles that Hezbollah have even have ranges of 200 kilometers.
Exactly.
So a military solution for Israel, I'm not even talking about Lebanon, for Israel, and I would like the people in the north to hear this, is not the solution. The solution is an agreed ceasefire that is abided by. Why the ceasefire hasn't worked is because Israel has violated it through that clause that they gave themselves, which allows them to do whatever they want when they want, again talking about double standards. So if you want peace, you have to have a ceasefire that two parties abide by unconditionally. When we look at what happened after 2024, Hezbollah did not fire one shot into Israel. Okay? There was 10,000 violations. There were 500 people killed, including assassinations, including women and children. And Hezbollah did say this time that if the same tactics are employed, that they're going to respond. Okay? So when I saw this clause, again, as it was, put into the agreement, I was like, horrified. I said, this is not a ceasefire. This is not going to advance us in anything. And in fact, they didn't want a ceasefire. So the clause is perfect for them. And they know that Hezbollah this time is going to answer back. And so the fighting continues. And they've now used the justification that Hezbollah was the one to violate the ceasefire, whereas they were the first to violate the ceasefire. With the demolitions, the destruction, the evacuations, these are all war crimes. These are not excluded from a ceasefire. A ceasefire isn't that you just stop, sending missiles. They've also violated the ceasefire from day one with the drones over our head, because it was supposed to be a ceasefire of all aerial activity. They violated that completely. So they're the violators. And people need to understand this.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about Lebanon's future over the next 5 years, politically, militarily, economically? What worries you the most?
I think in this time, the world is so disrupted. There's so much overall chaos, and we're caught in this tsunami. So I'm not optimistic in the short term. Unless something happens in Iran where there is, a shift, but we see from yesterday that it started up again, and it's just going to get worse. There are economic pressures on America, and there are internal pressures on America to stop the fighting. And there are elections coming up in America. And so President Trump is in this situation of double bind. On one hand, he doesn't want to lose face. On the other hand, he has to protect his image in America, and his popularity has sunk to the lowest levels ever. So he has to do something to stop this. The question is, how will that happen when you have Israel on his heels pushing for it to continue? Because as America continues the war in Iran, so Israel can continue their plans in Lebanon. Now, President Trump has put limits on what they can do in Lebanon, but they've already violated that.
But how come? Why has he put limits on what they can do in Lebanon?
I think because the negotiations with Iran, ultimately, the Iranians have always said that they include Lebanon. Okay. And so, inflaming the situation in Lebanon is not going to help with resolving the problem in Iran. This is a headache he does not want.
But why do you think that the Lebanese government said that they will negotiate, nobody should negotiate on their behalf?
I don't think that, they did say that, for sure. I don't think that Iran was negotiating on our behalf necessarily, but at the same time, you can't say that and then allow President Trump to negotiate on your behalf.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the double standard.
There's a double standard.
Yeah.
Yes. So somebody is negotiating on our behalf: the French, the Americans, the Iranians, the Saudis. So better not to say that. Better to just, do your own negotiations and get on with the job, and say thank you for anybody who stops the killing and stops the fighting.
Yeah. As your experience as an ambassador to Jordan for 3 years, what did it teach you about what people perceive Lebanon abroad?
Well, in Jordan, they love Lebanon. Especially His Majesty. He's got a very soft spot for Lebanon, and he's done a whole amount to help Lebanon. I don't know if you've seen the truckloads coming in and the planes and all that. So I think that there is a lot of love for Lebanon in Jordan. Yes. So being an ambassador there was wonderful. Yes. Obviously, it was a very hard time because we had the revolution, we had the economic collapse, and we had COVID. So that was the time.
And there was also the explosion.
And the explosion, yes. So we had all those while I was ambassador.
Yeah.
Which made
your hands
But you know what? It actually made the job more interesting for me because you were in a position where you had to help people. Like during COVID. Yes. You had to help people evacuate. Yes. You had to take care of people. And I like that. I like that more than the cocktail parties,
So we all know you as the daughter of Dany Chamoun and the granddaughter of Camille Chamoun, a diplomat and an ex-ambassador of Jordan, But very few
of Lebanon in Jordan.
Of Lebanon and Jordan. Yes. But very few of us know you as an artist. I myself didn't know until I actually visited your page and I started following you. So what does art give you that politics doesn't?
I think it saves my life. Okay. I do politics because it's in the blood. I was born into a political family. And there's a great sense of responsibility and duty to honor my family, especially my grandfather and my father as a martyr. So I did politics, but where I find myself, where I resource myself, where I regenerate is in my art. And politics are ups and downs in life. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. And you have to have something that channels the passion, the feelings, the emotions. So art has always given me that avenue to be able to process, to move on in my life, to experience art, which is fundamentally, working with harmony, beauty, symmetry, all these things.
You paint.
Yes, all these things which are lacking in real life because real life is so chaotic and destructive. But art is kind of, the sublimation.
And you've also recently launched a song, Save Lebanon.
I write poems.
Yes.
I've written poems all my life. I wrote, a couple of books.
Okay.
And when I really have trouble expressing myself, because, I have this mind where I can be both analytical and creative.
Yes.
And sometimes the analytical becomes very dry and unfulfilling. And so I need to express what I feel. And I can't do that through prose. I can do that through poetry.
Okay.
And putting poems to songs is something that I've just discovered through the use of AI. Which is wonderful.
Okay.
And many people criticize AI, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Okay.
على ماذا تتقاتلون وصوت جنوب لبنان من تحت الركام ينادي على ماذا تتقاتلون في حرب بلا مخرج مضمون بعض مع إيران وبعض مع أمريكا والبلد يموت كل يوم في العيون هل يهم الآن كيف ابتدأت الحكاية والجيش الإسرائيلي داخل الحدود والبيت محروق ومهجور إلى أين نمضي من هنا هذا الجواب الذي نحتاج محتاجه.
After everything Lebanon has lived through, what still gives you hope?
The people. You know, the people, the fact that I have never met a people so resilient, so capable of picking themselves up, of going from, you know, comfort and ease to hardship, and withstanding these shocks that we experience. So that gives me hope, is the fact that we are survivors. And I think that's something that Israel's going to have to reckon with if they decide to go any further in Lebanon, is that we're not going to back down, you know.
No, we're not.
We're not going to let them walk all over us and kick us out of our country.
No, we're not. Definitely. Your Excellency, thank you so much for the interview in English.
Thank you.
Now I have some questions for you in Arabic.
Okay.
And this is some questions from the people.
Okay.
So this is why I'm going to ask them to you in Arabic, because we want the people to be able to understand them and to. أول شيء في قسم من الناس عم بيسألوك سؤال، عم بيقولوا إنه في قسم بدهم فيدرالية بلبنان. فشو وجهة نظرك بالموضوع؟
صراحة أنا ضد الفيدرالية.
أوكي.
هلا في كلمة بيستعملوها اللي هو العيش المشترك، اللي استعملوها كتير، بس أنا بحب التنوع. أنا عايشة مثلا بالشوف. ليش بحب هالمنطقة؟ لأنه في نموذج لكل لبنان بالشوف، وهيدا الحلو، هيدا اللي بحبه أنا، إنه بنكتشف أشياء عن بعضنا. ما لازم نركز على الأشياء اللي هي تقسمنا بين بعضنا. في عنا تاريخ، في عنا ثقافة،
بس في ناس مقتنعين كتير انه في ديسكشنز كتير بعملوا مع الناس مقتنعين انه الحل الوحيد والانسب للبنان هو الفيدرالية، لانه هن ما بدهم يضلوا عم بيواجهوا مقاومة بجنوب ضد اسرائيل، فاذا نحن ما بدنا نعمل سلام هن بدهم فيدرالية. فهي المنطق هو جاي من هون.
ليه بعرف، بس قبل الاجتياح الإسرائيلي اللي صار، يعني شو كنت بدك تعملي بمسيحية الريف اللي عايشين بجزين، بصيدا، بالجنوب، بالبقاع؟ يعني كيف هالقصة تنحل؟ هي صعبة جدا. بعدين بلد مثل لبنان صغير كتير، هلا عم بيطالبوا بعدة مطارات والى اخره، لانه بدهم ينفذوا هذا المشروع الفيدرالي. انا ما عندي مشكله انه يزيدوا مطارات، بس اللامركزيه بالنسبه لإلي، اللامركزيه الاداريه هي انسب بكتير من الفيدراليه. لانه اذا ما عندك دوله قويه، الفيدراليه حتى ما بتمشي.
سؤال من سيده جنوبيه منصور. امبارح سألتني، رح سميها حتى زينة، سألتني امبارح وكانت كتير هيك مندفعة كتير. قالت لي لما انت بتشوفي كل هذا الضرب والدمار اللي عم بيصير وكل هذا الجرائم اللي عم بيصير بسور، وعم بتشوفي انه ردة فعل المسؤولين ما عم بتكون، يعني هل عم بتشوفي ردة فعل المسؤولين عم بيكون على قد المستوى المطلوب؟ أنجأ يعني رح تحسسها انه هي لبنانيه عن جد، انه هي منتميه لهذا.
لانه في كتير ناس بالدوله عم بيعملوا كانه الجنوب منفصل او ما بيخصهم. اذا بتشوفي كيف البلد عايش، يعني من بالشمال ومن بيروت وطالع كانه ما في حرب، فهدول الناس ما بيقدروا يحطوا حالهم بهيدا الجو. وعلينا نحن دايما نذكرهم انه لا، انه هيدا جزء اساسي من لبنان، جزء زراعي، جزء لكل الطاقة، المياه والنفط وكل هالاشياء، هيدول كلهم بالجنوب. اذا بنخسر الجنوب بنخسر جوهر لبنان، فهيدا شيء ما فينا نفصل جنوب من كل لبنان، وهيدا غلط. فأنا بتعاطف معه على الآخر، وبشوف إنه شو عم بيصير إهانة كتير كبيرة لسيادة لبنان، لشعب لبنان، وإنه بدي أقول لزينة إنه أنا مثلا مني نسيتك أبدا، أنت بقلبي.
سمعتي زينة؟ في عنا مسؤولين بلبنان أو في عنا شباب موجودين عم يطلعوا كتير على السوشيال ميديا هلا وعم ينعمل مقابلات معهم كأنه إنه هن عندهم حضور قوي، بيقولوا إنه هن حابين يروحوا على إسرائيل يشربوا بيرة ويعملوا سياحة هونيك. شو بتقولي له؟
إذا إسرائيل تسحب كل جندي من أراضينا ونوصل على اتفاق محترم بين بلدين ونحتفظ على سيادتنا الكاملة، ندرس الموضوع.
شو رأيك بالعفو العام؟ في ناس بدهم عفو عام عن تجار المخدرات، وفي ناس بدهم عفو عام عن قتل الجيش، وفي ناس بدهم عفو عام عن العملاء.
رح أقول لك بطريقة كثير واضحة.
أنت شو رأيك بلبنان لوين رايح بهذا الموضوع؟
في كلمة بس واحدة رح استعملها، أنا ضد
العفو العام.
ضد العفو العام.
مع الإعدام؟
مع الإعدام يعني بظروف معينة،
لأنه نحن الإعدام انلغى بالتسعينات يمكن.
وعندنا ضغط كتير من أوروبا والبلاد الأجنبية اللي هي ضد الإعدام لأسباب إنسانية. بس أنا لا، أنا مع الإعدام بظروف كتير محددة ومعينة.
بس في دول متحضرة عندها الإعدام موجود.
في عم أقول لك أنا معه، بس بموضوع يعني بمواضيع معينة.
باختصار اوكي. طار الجنوب
ما ليك على كل هالسنين وانا صرت كبيرة بالعمر قطعنا بكتير مراحل، ما هيك؟ وكم مرة كان فينا نقول انه راح الجنوب، بالاخر ما راح. فرح اقول هالمرة كمان انه ما راح الجنوب. هيدا من تجربتي التاريخية.
بده يرجع يعني.
لازم يرجع، لازم نحن نعمل كل جهدنا انه يرجع، انه ما نستسلم بهذا الموضوع ابدا، لانه هيدا تاريخ العالم، اراضيهم، جذورهم، اجدادهم. هذا الموضوع ما بينترك هيك.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for this interview. It was great having you with us today. Keep your posts coming. We love to see them, and we love to hear your point of view all the time.
I will certainly keep speaking my truth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.